Okay, this is my third day in Bagan and my second day on a scooter, and we started at about right there where my hostel is. And what I'm going to do, well, yesterday we came down this road here and visited a couple little temples on the way down through here. Got to here, and here's where we spent most of the day, is down in old Bagan here looking at those temples. Made a long drive down here, visited the lacquerware workshop in this little town on the way back, and then went back up the second street here. What I'm doing today is I want to get to the temples right down in this area here. It starts with a D, and so I wanted to just come across or come down this road here and then find a road that went off to the side and then take the goat paths across through here. They call them goat paths just because they're going to be trails like that one right there, to just for the fun of it wander around till I got over to this side, this street here, and then come down and pick up where I want to go today. So I'm just doing this for the fun of it. So we pulled off to this temple here just as a starting point. Well, our schedule today is we're going to do what I've labeled as second day. And the first place we're going to is, once we get to that main road, take a right. We'll go down to the part that goes to these three places: Dhamma Pahto, Sulamani Temple, Thatbyinnyu I'm pronouncing any of that, don't know, and then we'll go on from there. So far that idea hasn't worked. I'm behind this temple in a field of whatever these little puppies are. It's a plant I've seen something similar to this before. It has little seeds in it, but exactly what it is, but it's somebody's crop. But my trail ended. So we're at 12, or Htilominlo Temple. Came in on that road to the left of it because my last idea didn't pan out, since the goats don't even use that path, just the farmer to get to that field, I guess. So I'll go visit this temple since I'm here, and then I will continue in the southwest direction if I can find something more than goat paths from this temple. We are at this temple, usual gauntlet, and not only the size of the temple, it's the access to that main road indicates why all these souvenirs are here, because this is where tour buses will probably stop. It is an impressive one. Must have been magnificent when it was fully flushed out with all the cement surface detail. I think most tourists come to say they've seen and to shop. Insulting as hell, but it sometimes appears to be very true. Singalava. What's nice to this temple, we can see more of the surface original detail. Notice that golden eagle Htilominlo wears. In other words, a shop advertises itself on the entrance into the Buddha. These flowers you frequently see vendors selling them, individuals selling them at street corners, just probably because they add a beautiful fragrance to the inside of your car or home. So we'll do the obligatory walkabout. Embellished a little bit more than some of the temples we see, probably because the tourists come here, but maybe it even has a greater attraction for those who actually frequent it for religious purposes. Maybe they'd place these flowers here. Let's see if they're real. Yes, it appears they are. And then some water for Buddha to drink, perhaps. Some symbol. Or another quadrant entrance. And notice that further entry into the compound, which we haven't seen so much before. This temple is nice, in fact, because you can see more of a hint of the decorations that used to be covering these walls. Probably, if not with vibrant color, certainly with great detail. I'll get up a little closer because it seems above the head of Buddha you can see different colors. Yes. So there is a suggestion that at one time there were beautiful colors in these temples besides the gold of Buddha. I'm looking at these more stones, flagstones. We can see that there's been some attempt to creatively work those. Htilominlo. Htilominlo. Shesube. The gentleman is pointing out that apparently these inscriptions are kind of like a horoscope of some sort. Perhaps for the Buddha. I can't get too much from that, of course. He points out to me that here we have symbols of Buddha. Remember, the more the better. People are so genuinely friendly here in Myanmar. You hope that tourism does not make that a cynical, or turn that into a cynical dynamic as you see elsewhere throughout the world. Older gentleman took considerable pride in explaining to me what he knew. Here we've seen these corners before. This one's been a little bit restored, but what's more important for our viewpoint is we can see some of the detail on there. And perhaps there is that Ogre Flower, a flower that has an ogre at the top, representing the flower, but more representing a defensive entity, character, or devil, or whatever you want to call it. But imagine when this was colorful and vibrant. Note here for these little niches, this one is quite elaborate relative to many of the temples we've seen. And this one a little bit better protected from weather and so forth. We can see again the hint of past decoration on all these walls. Glad I stopped here. This is the first time I've seen this much of that. Now here it just seems that they're black and white, but maybe the color is faded. There are hints of variation in tone. Maybe that's hints and variation of washed out color. And here, notice we can see the color of the flesh and the black of the hair and the red outlines too on this character. The architectural detail, like a framing, has been painted on there in the past. And here a Buddha sitting in a painted niche. It's more modern graffiti or the remnant of some of the detail. I don't know. Because if you look closely, you can see that like painting within the lines type of little homemade projects I used to have when I was in the hospital as a kid. Here the outline has been done first and then filled in with color perhaps. This may be the same thing with the color eroded or never placed. And here cups of water. Don't know what the symbolism of that is. These umbrellas, of which here there are 4. The idea of circles as a graphic is very prevalent. I wonder if that is more significant than mere artistic selection. Here is perhaps food offerings for Buddha. She is now taking me into this somewhat adjacent building with Buddhas, of course. She's going to show me how I can climb up to the top again. We always love these days. He's just my informal guide. We're on top of a small, what's called a monastery, and she has just enlightened me, and I will you in a moment. That is a temple, of course, and temples have large, high entrances, as you can see. But monasteries, like the one that we're standing on right now, this simple square building, they have very short entryways and short stairway heights. And the reason for that is that the monks in a monastery are obligated to be bending down in obeisance to Buddha. So monasteries always have short entries and temples have big high ones. This one is called what? What number is the name?
This one is Htilominlo.
Htilominlo.
Yeah.
And then where I'm going to go is Sulamani.
Sulamani is there.
And this was built by the father?
Yeah, this is built by father and this is built by son.
This is a room inside this monastery, and her point is that this room is like this because monks will come here and spend a great deal of time in meditation. There are small doorways, no windows, because there should be as little distraction as possible for the monks. In the temple, it's completely the opposite.
For knowing, before when we make the balance, we have to make like this today design. How many kilo if I want from here, something like gold or opium, and we have to balance like that to make the equal. How many kilo if I want it.
What is that for?
This one for just shook it to make a balance. They don't have to touch the hand. They have to balance with the stick
I see.
like this.
Oh.
And which one if they want it, because one they keep a hand.
So more honest.
Keep it like this, or they believe like that.
Yes.
They don't take a hand.
So it's honest.
Just to make like this, put a weight and some whatever
see.
they want to buy, like make a balance.
Okay.
But like this one, they are new. But we can remember for all things, all the food long time ago.
So as my guide said, who is actually a vendor, that's one of the strategies. Go to school, learn English, and your family makes things. And as the woman, one of your strategies, and has always been for at least the last couple centuries, you would be the one who sets up a shop to sell things. This temple is known because of the remaining what she calls plastic, I'll call plaster or stucco, and the symbols and decorations of that. You can just imagine how pretty it was when the whole temple looked like this, eh? Here maybe we have a good example of an ogre flower symbol to protect the temple. I'm just going to go completely around this temple to see what good examples of the plastic work I can find. Guesses these little niches also had probably pictures of Buddhas, but I don't know that for sure. So I'm focusing on this faux column, which means just a chunk of brick now. And I'm going to pan just quickly across so you can see what at least one portion of it looked like when it was finished with the plastic. Near the top one, but I'm not convinced that isn't a repro or restoration. This looks like a pretty complete one, although the upper part may be a restoration, which is fine. This pair of sandals to the left, the one that's right into the corner, has been there for quite some length of time. What happened to that person? Did they die? Was it a tourist who simply forgot they put stuff there and walked around bare feet all day long? What kind of a person comes to Asia and wears big clodhoppers like that? I wonder. This is a temple I navigated to by chance from the last temple we were at by just following a dirt road. And just beyond that lady in the pink is that main secondary road or southern road that goes parallel with the main road. So I'll go to it and turn right. I can't get the name of this. When they told me it, they said it's not on the map. None of the signs give it in English. although I do reference the last temple I was at behind me. Okay, I've just come down from that last temple whose name I didn't know and found this road going south, just a dirt road. I think it's going to, I think that's Sulamani, the one that we saw from the top of that little monastery. But I thought, if nothing else, I'll just navigate along, and I'm bound to find some sign or something telling me where I want to go. Okay, I've just come down this dirt road from there, and I'm now at a major intersection that I'll show you, but I thought I'd pan around. I'm going to continue to go south along this spur of this major intersection I'm at. And as I look across the major intersection I'm at, you can see temple, and one way back in there, a couple over there, a couple over there, a couple over there. And of course, looking back on the route, I'm going to go there, there. This is what you see out here. It's fun. Kind of neat that this temple, which very few people come to, tourists or otherwise it appears, nevertheless has someone with enough affection for it to ensure that pretty flowers grow all around it. Isn't that neat? This is intriguing not only for the panorama of temples down this visual corridor that I'm creating, but here it looks like work is going on. This may be the rubble from this temple right in front of us, but you notice there's another big pile over here. And so hopefully they're thinking about restoring that. You can see a little fragment of the Buddha there. See right where my finger is? So perhaps somebody has enough affection for this place to restore it. You wonder how they would make those decisions if it's the government, given there are so many temples. This may have been the product of an earthquake or just deterioration. And I think that's Sulamani. We'll find out when we get there. See that one of the first things they're doing after they've removed the rubble is creating a new brick platform where necessary. I hear what sounds like a motor inside here, so just out of raw curiosity, I'm going to go check it out. Here we can see that Buddha survives on a pretty nice little altar, frankly. New interpretive sign startled a little flock of pretty egrets. Isn't that a pretty view? What's fascinating is that no matter where you look, it's just temple after temple in this three-dimensional panorama. A little stupa. Just a cracked base. Looks like something earthquakes do. And where rubble has fallen, perhaps on it, and chipped the top of it. That first little, mostly demolished temple, it looks like they may have restored or cleaned up that inner archway. Look at this industrious ant colony undermining these temples that are being restored. And look at the pathway. For some reason, you can see the pathway going over to their other enclave. Here's some ladies over here harvesting that crop, whatever it is, laughing and joking and enjoying themselves. This must be the crop, whatever it is, whatever it's used for. They purposely put it in these sheaves, it appears, even as I watch them work. Well, of course, now I have a dilemma. Which of these two large temples do I go to? I think the only practical solution is both. Trying to get to this temple, but the problem I'm having is that I have this large either wall or platform that it used to be on that I have to find an opening to get to the temple. So we'll keep moving around it until hopes we find such a pathway. From our experience so far, we can imagine that this, if it is a large platform, had large type towers at each of the corners and perhaps sub-towers along the perimeter. I guess that's the other temple we were looking at. It's hard in this flat land to gauge the distance relative to size because the size of the temples vary and the topography is flat. There's a large temple I'm trying to get to. I'm now on goat paths, about ready to encroach on somebody's farmland. And here is what seemed initially a larger temple, but is not a large temple. It's a smaller one. Appears to have no activity, which it makes it even all the more intriguing. So we'll go explore it. The folks that take care of this property, apparently, and others who squat on it. Tourists, if they happen to choose to use a correct entrance. This gives us a little idea of what takes place here. This is Pagoda series number 744 of probably the 3000. Restoration project of the pagoda at Myanmar Bagan was completed in the year of 11th December 1958. Special thanks also given to the abbot of Australia, Tung Shan Monastery. So that earlier restoration probably refers to the removal of trash. Maybe the replacement of some of this brickwork here was part of it. The same verbiage in Burmese. And again, it would be foolhardy to dismiss the effort so far and the fact that this temple is pretty much unvisited. It's simply a resource. Someday in the future, it will be one of the places that tourists come because there will be so many tourists here. But a young person who came here with money and vision and a love of this area could plan on a very profitable life by just setting up several really expanding hostels and other businesses associated with tourism, because it is going to explode. That is a rooster making that strange noise. And somewhere recently I have read that birds of the same species in different areas will have different calls that identify those birds of that area. So no surprise, perhaps, that a chicken over here or a rooster over here makes a strangely different sound than our American barnyard roosters. What he's saying is, let's get out of here, chick. This looks like a rough bit of restoration here, so. Nicely preserved graphics. Looks like it has a background color of gold, doesn't it? And here bricks are painted red as part of the motif, as well as, I think, real bricks are there, but underneath the plastic. If I understood my guide, shop owner comments, these outer circumferences, hallways, if you will, represent in some manner the cosmology of Buddhism. For example, in here, if we go in all the way, we are, of course, at the level of heaven where Buddha is. And when we go out to the next level, we may be at the human level of existence. And if we go further still, we're out at the area where hell may be represented. Notice there are still colors behind this Buddha, which is fairly rare, no matter what temples we go into. So this could be restored, perhaps relatively simply. Interestingly, the paintings and the walls are pretty clear here. What remains? And here, rather, the grandiose Buddha is a reclining Buddha in a niche. Also said that a businessman, for example, seeking success in a business must/will come and stand and pray before Buddha inside that area there, closest to Buddha, then go away, and if he has success, he will then return to the same place and thank Buddha for his support. And in this squalor, she and her family live out their lives in the midst of this incredible architecture. She's over there with a stick, doesn't even look like it's a knife, maybe it's a knife, machete type, knocking out weeds. Perhaps that's her contribution to the upkeep. I was coming along this road. That's the temple we were just in. That's the temple we're going to go to. And I was coming along, going to the right, and I saw this embankment, and I thought, wonder why an embankment? And out of curiosity, came up here and discovered this. It may be that it's just a dammed up stream somehow, but it looks pretty and it looks different. That may be the dam down there, if in fact that's my analysis correct. I can hear music coming from there. Like Cambodia, could this be some kind of water reservoir? Or could it also have, if it's even that, could it also have some religious significance? That's the temple we were just in, and here's where we're going. Notice that large wall. Now that one's quite high. And there, probably an entry tower. Some folks out here working in the fields I wanted to get a closer look at. As they have apparently done for eons, it's ladies that work the fields. So we have now arrived at Sulamani, which is the temple that Father built from the one that we were in, where the lady was being our little guide. And my little guide told us that this temple is known more for its decoration on the inside, so I'm going to do a loop around the outside just to check it out. A little critter we saw running around that other temple, a little squirrel. Isn't he a cutie? He has the flightiness of a chipmunk and the speed of a chipmunk, but the look and attributes, of course, of a squirrel. So you see, decorations have a merit. It's his way of saying, this is my temple, you are merely a guest. Notice as I pan about how those walls are very much defensive walls. Now, I'm not saying they were intended for defense, but conceptually they provide a barrier to something. The designs here of the plastique are different. Don't yet see an ogre flower. Here perhaps we see the ogre in a different detail. And because of this, it dawned on me that all of these things we were looking at that looked like this are just representations of temples or stupas or pagodas or zeti or cheti or whatever other term you wish to use. And here would have been a statue of a Buddha. Maybe restorations, but they may at least give us a hint as to what those little medallion devices had as embellishment. If we look at these of course I think have been restored and painted and so forth at some point in time, but behind it we can see what would have been the full border of plastic, if you will, sitting on this brick. This young lady is a restorer. She's removing the mold in that time-honored manner of archaeological restorers with a small spatula type of implement and toothbrush and a brush. Very detailed, slow work. Tools of the future. We have many people doing much work to do. Here are some more of these little medallions, I'll call them, in remnants of color and shape. Removing this mold by hand like that seems so minuscule and slow. One would think there's some chemical process that would protect it, yet be faster. Let's do this, and they only remove the most obvious. And they don't remove it down to the pure brick, just scrape it down. You know that in the interstices of the surface, the mold remains and will grow back out. They're a very rare remnant or restoration. Can't tell, frankly. I wonder why I'm preoccupied with these, is because it's rare to see them. Everything else is the original brick. Here's a complete row of medallions that look pretty good, but notice how this has that soft patina of just eroded something surface, yet this one has a shiny surface of a more recent, maybe an old restoration. See, what's interesting on this side, a number of these medallions exist in presumably fairly decent condition. One always hopes you're seeing something original, but then what does original mean when you're talking hundreds of years, if not thousands? This is part of the restorer's paraphernalia. Yeah, some sand for some kind of cement. There may be one that's brick-like for that material. Here are syringes, so perhaps these do hold chemicals that perform either restoration functions or cleaning functions besides just that scraping. I don't know if we've seen this lower portion of the corners in this good a shape or not. This is an interesting artifact. Haven't seen one of these in an extant state on these temples yet. It looks like some color too. See a little bit of red, maybe some black, maybe some restoration on the top. Now we enter into the first portal of Buddha. The evidence, the first evidence of some nice wall paintings that remain. Some snakes or Naga type of characters. Buddha. Maybe that's the tree of life, who knows. There, a temple above Buddha. First I thought it might be a boat. Here on this wall, a very well preserved reclining Buddha. Look at the detail up above. It looks like people's feet from the hips down, or from the knees down. This is an interesting face. It's not the Buddha face, but it may be, but it doesn't look like it. It looks more like an older, wizened man or woman. See that same wizened look, but it may be a Buddha, although the breast seems to be a breast on it. And the long ears, those are indicative of something. And this woman, I think it's a woman, is next to a Buddha. Maybe it's his mother. Another reclining Buddha. The nice thing about just guessing at the answers to the questions I raise is I don't have to be right. And I'm never wrong. I just don't know. Great to see these original paintings, apparently. Just to know what these walls were covered with. Here, a wall full of Buddhas underneath what look like 3 temples. I can only imagine what the significance of this obelisk is. We knew. There are more, see? These look like they're a design of some sort. Is it a script, or was it a script? There's a lovely painting with 5 or 6 snakes or naga types on either side of a Buddha holding a lotus blossom. Now the detail remains, but probably not the color. It was probably a much more interesting with color, multiple colors. Interesting, there was a stairway up to something at one time. There's a great painting of an elephant and carrying one of the whatever, palenque or whatever they call it, palanquin. Anyway, a seat for someone, the Buddha, to sit in. Huh. Companion piece on the opposite side of this niche. And this, I think, this what looks like a square thing is probably the symbolic umbrella. I think in the Chinese culture, it's a round cylinder type device. And a large snake-like creature. This is interesting. The Buddha has a canopy for a hat, if you will. There's a line of characters seemingly emanating from a lotus blossom with some kind of script in between them. Who knows what they are? It's a pretty little niche, if you will. It's not a niche, it's just in a corner as we walk around. This is a particularly impressive panel if we could look at an archaeologist, painter's reconstruction of it, if you will. That's why it's protected by this fence. But apparently there are rows representing Buddha's followers, rows of males, rows of females. There we see animals in that 3rd level up. There it looks like something else. This may be a reflection that you see something similar to this in Christian churches where on a big panel like this they'll try to represent the entire cosmology of Christianity from heaven down through human life on earth, down through hell and all of its horror. In perspective for what we're looking at, but look at animals, whatever they are. Looks like maybe horses right there. There. Don't know what those things are. But I think elephants in there. Notice the stairway. Or maybe just the walls of one level of a temple, not seen in single point perspective. And here, a whole line of Buddhas. Remember, Buddha has many faces, many forms, for lack of a better term. Here the step is not blocked, so we'll go up it, of course. This is as high as I can go. Notice in the lower line, which which is a line of monks that runs this entire wall. They have their begging bowls in their hands. What the role of the woman is in this religion, in this panel, I don't know. I think all along this level are maybe lions, certainly elephants. Looking through this grill of the camera, we'll stay in focus on the painting. You can see that this is some kind of a building. Ignorance is bliss, but only if you're unable to recognize that you are ignorant. Then you can wallow in your bliss. But for those who recognize our ignorance, it's anything but blissful. It's more frustrating and intriguing and exciting. Here we have characters in a boat. One wonders how that fits in the cosmology. But then water is important to every culture, with 70% of Earth's surface being water. We've got our 3 boats, or 4. 3, it looks like, but they're being apparently towed by the master boat, which looks like it has a little kind of a temple seat, but I'm guessing it's just a very elaborate seat for perhaps Buddha. I want to get in close here just because the color is so distinct. I want to take a closer look at that detail. Such painting is usually rough. Notice they don't stay within the lines. But on the grand scale, it makes a little difference. Yet in other cultures, like the Inca and their incredible stonework, detail, perfection is an absolute mandate. A curious look, isn't it? Certainly the profile. More of some kind of a cartoon character, maybe a duck. If you can appreciate the detail here. The color now is a pink, whether it was once a brilliant red, I don't know, or a solid red at least. Apparently there's a tradition here of touching the Buddha, so you climb up the ladder and you touch him, but you have to get that purple ticket first. See what it is? Each of those little packets has a little bit of gold leaf in it. And so they're going to pull that gold leaf out if that old man doesn't fall on his ass off that thing. And they'll put a piece of gold leaf on, and that's how, again, they contribute to. Just across the dirt road, another one of these ponds, for lack of a better term. Remember, in Cambodia, in Angkor Wat, the control of large reservoir of water by the king increased his power over the people because agriculture, the society's sustenance, was dependent upon that water. Looking closely at my map again, you can see Sulamani there, right in the center, but to the left of that red slash, if you will. But to the right may be the temple I was looking for, but didn't realize that I had found it. Thatbyinnyu, or whatever that is. So I think what we'll be doing is taking off to the west to Dhamma, Pahto, which may be that one over there. So we'll see if we can find roads that travel in that direction. Come from that temple, Sulamani, on a road dirt road goes from right to left beyond those trees. I just thought it'd be fun to pop into this little collection of temples that once upon a time were most important to the people who built them, or at least the merit they sought was. We'll continue off down this way in the hopes that we're going towards that Dhamma. So just to do it, we'll walk around the outside in case we see anything novel. Because at this point, you've templed out almost, and you're only interested, I'm only interested in what is the novel. This is the most complete that I've seen, and it may in fact be a restoration, because if you look up above, it's not so terribly incomplete, but much different does it look. Is it really possible that the window above protected that one below that much? Maybe. This is a discolored element that we've seen before in fairly pristine condition. This is apparently one of the largest temples in Bagan. First or second, I think. Not so much perhaps in height as it is in overall volume of space consumed. It sits on this platform, which has its little corner towers, if you will, but then there's that big wall that's surrounded on this platform. Now, whether we're on a platform or whether that's just a surrounding wall, I'll have to take another look. But that's a fairly substantial entry structure, at least from what remains, isn't it? A little bit closer look at that entryway. Imagine how it towered. Looks like that was the beginning of an arch, a big arch in the center that went a little more than halfway up. Grass growing out is terrible for the temples, but sure adds a pretty element of color. This looks pretty complete. Here another look at what those entry structures were looking like. You can see how that arch is formed and how they're carrying that arch with the embellishment of the faux column on the front, if you will. They're usually made by local families. They can make them out of either clay or wood, I'm not sure. And then the little puppets are cute. I can well imagine a mother or grandmother buying these for their children. That'd be a nice thing for that child to have hanging in their house for eons of their life. Okay.
Video's okay, camera's okay.
Questo è gioco è antichissimo questo, no? Con le conchiglie, come possiamo dire. Così, no?
So whichever way the shells come up defines how far they can move the stone or their money, apparently. Notice how they drop the shells into the cup and then raise their arm and hand with a great, abrupt, emphatic flourish, just like a concert pianist. Here's one of the stones that originally held the posts of the huge doors that would have been here, long gone now, but we've seen them in other temples. The design of this temple is a little bit unique because behind the Buddha is a niche or an entryway, and it goes to another internal corridor for some reason, so we'll explore that. Looks like we could pass from right to left behind the Buddha to get into the inner corridor, but I'm going to go up this stairway here and see if it is a normal corridor access. It appears to be so. And notice how the light from outside where we entered shines past the Buddha, leaving a shadow almost of a Buddha inside that portal of light. I don't know if that was intended. It's novel. There's another Buddha. Oh no, that's me. There's another Buddha deep in its own niche. In this corridor, we're standing behind the Buddhas. If you look forward, there's another corridor there, then another corridor. I'm not sure if that's the fourth corridor, but it may all fit in with that same cosmological scheme. Just here, there are portals going to the outside, but I'll turn around 180 degrees. Here, another portal, but it's been filled in. Why? Now we're looking at the back of another Buddha in this interesting scheme and see another reclining Buddha in the back of that. There's something about these stones that guide was explaining. I didn't get it. This is just a good-sized cluster of small to very small temples that I encountered as I was working my way along some of the dirt roads. I had another bigger one in mind towards the west, but I can't see it from here. Well, look at that color. I suspect it just means brick that's been painted. Sure, this is a pink paint. Probably went right over the top of the mold. Whatever that implies for the future of this little building. He lives there. I went through another place coming off of literally a goat trail into a regular little community of houses, but they appeared to be completely deserted for some reason. I think we just were. So this has been cleaned up quite a little bit. Maybe that's the price for having land here that you can farm and live on, is that you take responsibility for a cluster of these temples. That's a good idea if it's the case. Flowers, aren't they? There's some pretty yellow flowers. Here's a fairly large stupa with some sub-stupas on it. The irony of looking at all these temples in every direction you look is that there were in the past, in the 13th, end of the 13th century, in the early 1400s, 2 more temples or structures for every one that you and I are seeing. Because there are 3,000 now, there were 10,000 then. So imagine. I wanted to get closer to this white one because it is white now, and I can see people climbing up on that top layer, so it means I can climb up and get a view. So let's go do it. Fun of being out here is, of course, traveling these goat paths and running into whatever you run into, and certainly different perspectives than most get who come and just use the roads and their taxis to get here. Couple Brahma bulls, I guess you call them, and the wagon that they occasionally have to pull, and somebody's private village, but at least I got in here. Now inside the temple grounds, and we'll truck on up to the top. Fortunately, there are handrails to make it easier and safer coming down. This reminds me of the steep steps at, I think, Tikal, maybe Palenque, can't remember, but Tikal for sure, and it's 2 towers where the steps are quite high. In other words, you have to step up quite a distance to get to the next step. Their purpose was, in theory, to get their sacrificial people who were being marched up those stairs, get their hearts pumping. So that was a better ideal, apparently, for when the priests tore out their hearts. My reckoning, Nyaung-U is up there somewhere. The temples we were just at was this one. We must have come through the back way here, maybe along that route, sandy route there. Then we were over at that temple, and then that's Sulamani, I think. And then I think we were up at that temple up there, one of those, where we went up on top of the monastery to look back kind of in this direction. Bagan is probably up here to our left. I'll start here and make a silent pan all the way around. And in the background, the Irrawaddy River. So triple the number. I think that may be a monastery meditation room. Little cluster is the cluster we were at a few minutes ago. See the red, top of the red temple sticking up there about in the middle, dead middle right now. Wandered into another cluster of temples along a goat path, but behind me is the main road, or the southern main road. Huge temples, but pretty good sized temples. And this one over here we want to take a closer look with lots of gold still on it. This front portion towards us has obviously been removed, probably from earthquake, and we can get a look, if you will, a cross-section look into these large corridors that go around the core. One wonders at the story of this particular temple. Was that the way this temple and these kinds of temples were decorated? Interesting if it was. Still a fair amount of plastic, as she called it. The little monastery building. It's a pretty little courtyard. Those lovely flowers. So this has been cleaned up to make it acceptable for tourists to come, but I don't see very many. But in the future, when the number of tourists in the area increases, a temple like this will get considerable use. And this particular temple is pretty because of these, not only its color, but these little smaller corner tower spires that we see. They allude to the grander one in the center. Let's take a closer look at that. That temple we climbed up is Shweandaw Paya. We'll pick up these two pagodas on our way back to the hostel. This is just outside Thar Gate. Just assume that this one is the top one, or the first one of those two. Notice the square building, which is the monastery for monks to meditate in. Probably rather pretty when it was first done. Looks like it had some red colors in it. Looks like our steeple, the brass part's getting a little slightly cattywampus. I think businesses sponsor or pay for these entry doors so that they can lock and secure this facility. Very pretty the way it's finished off in here, isn't it? With mirrored tile, if you will. Very pretty treatment. Before we enter, a tile entryway. Don't know if that's a loudspeaker or a light. I assume a loudspeaker. It's a neat little package when it's restored. It would be a very useful thing on this major street to give people an advance knowledge of what some of these places they're going to visit could look like. and once did. This, I suspect, is a monastery, and perhaps the monastery for either one or both of these pagodas we're visiting right this moment. Now we'll go into this one here and explore it a little further. It's kind of interesting because the layout is, it looks like 5 stupas, 5 major stupas. Of course, the most dominant one, but the 2 outliers are lower than the middle ones, and all of them are lower than the one in the center. It may not be a Buddhist shrine, it's perhaps a Hindu shrine, I can't be sure. We'll go closer and see. Now it still looks like the heavy presence of Buddha, just a different design here. Stupas appear to have the same design. The major one embellished with lion-type characters at the corners, backed up by small little brass, whatever those are called. And we can notice that there are some additional stupas here. It looks like a phalanx of temples and shrines, stupas. There's some ladies doing some crop work. I think there's a man over there too, that's encouraging. This critter looks somewhat cat-like, but with a double horn on top. This little temple off to the side is interesting because it has the little stupa, has that covered area. It's a raised platform, quite pretty, isn't it? One can just imagine a wealthy person having something like this in the backyard. Like we might put a gazebo. Remember the name, but we were there either yesterday or a few moments ago, or both. Here a golden stupa in between these other 2. And here's still another nearby temple, it looks like, with that area down in there. Maybe it's access covered causeway. And here to the left a stupa. Here's some grain, probably for the little squirrel I saw approaching that till he saw me approaching the exit, and he scampered up on top out of the way. Very pretty, and it would have been really quite pretty when it was brand new, particularly when its paintings were new. They're not bad now. Parts washed out. Here's something terrible on the left is happening to a man or a woman, presumably connected to the woman on the right. Can't see for sure what they're doing to her though, or him, or it. No, it's a her. These wooden columns are pretty with all the dark patina and a little bit of a top to the pillars. Stupa out of wood. Certainly looks impressive, doesn't it? Probably spectacular in the evening, but I don't know that I want to ride down here on a bike in the evening. This is interesting because it's just this dense cluster of temples and stupas. Look at that one almost tipping over to the left a bit. There are so many of these. Out, not too far from where we just were a few moments ago, but traveling on these dirt paths. Kind of a rural scene. It's such a lovely mix of the temples and the rural scene. Those are some bicycles of, I'm sure, some ladies who work up ahead. A little reluctant to go disturb or impose on them. You can see how they've laid out their crop. Whatever it is, I don't know. Form of grain. I'm guessing this is some kind of grain, but I don't know what it is. No, these may be melons here. Some of the implements of the trade. There's some more. Notice that those are turned wood pieces on this lovely wagon. Now down, I think the main jetty, you see a barge coming in. They're a curiously nicely painted boat. There the men doing their incredible labor, one bag at a time. Looks like cement. Could make sense. The world is made of cement. Look at that boatload of logs out there. Where is it going? What damage is it cutting down, taken? This may be one of the boats that I will take up to Mandalay, at least I hope to. It's a 2-day overnight trip. There's some more down there. Notice how they tried to pretty up this little area for we tourists, and I think the gesture should be appreciated. 10-15 years from now, you won't see what we see here. Everything will be much more refined than it is right now. Much more developed. These people will lose their homes, something else bigger, more cement will go in. So the tourists don't have to wake up too early to get their boat in the morning. They're going to fill that truck one bag at a time. And they chat amongst themselves. Sometimes you hear a song, or it almost sounds like a chant. We can bemoan that kind of work, but their families, they and their families will eat because of this work. But just imagine the toil that lies underneath that canvas. Each bag, one at a time. Looking at the same thing in the ship behind it, or the barge behind it. There are ladies doing laundry. An irony considering what probably flows into that river as a normal course. Their systems are hopefully used to it. Hopefully they are immune. Well, these houses, or this house, has a stone fence that took some considerable effort to make. Get it down to the point, like you can see, where they don't even have to use their hands to hold it on. That implies a lot of strength. Interesting, here's an old longboat submerged in the mud up here on top of the bank. Someone probably had hopes of restoring that at one time, and then that was given up. As I get hustled just for stuff, I can videotape this soccer game. Very pretty. Yeah, thank you. The fairly large temple complex on the northwest portion of Nyaung-U. It's impressive looking with the coloring like that, because we get to see what all the rest of them that we saw that weren't like that would have looked like. Maybe someday will. Notice there we're looking at a small monastery and perhaps a monk inside meditating. Here we're at another pagoda not too far away, nicely painted up. More buildings nearby this complex. Very pretty, very Chinese looking, maybe even Thai. Some kind of I suspect a religious procession, but I have no idea. Unlike many of the ones you see in the world, this one obviously very mechanized. And that may not even be a religious thing, I don't know what it is. A lot of people people involved in it, and I suppose if I could read Burmese, I'd know what that stands for. Here, a little human elephant. That's very clever. It looks like one. Wish I could have gotten it earlier.